Welcome, everybody, to the Mind, Body, and Spirit of the Caregiver, to our webinar today. We're so glad you're here as we explore the emotional, physical, and mental journey of caregiving. Today, you will hear from caregivers and health professionals who will share stories, strategies, and small but powerful changes that can help you take care of yourself while caring for someone else. Whether it's finding those small moments of peace or celebrating little victories, we hope today's session gives you practical tools and a renewed sense of strength to carry forward. And in special recognition, we'd also like to take a moment to recognize EISAI and Lilly for their continued support for this mission. Their shared commitment to empowering patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals plays a vital role in advancing the conversations and resources that make a meaningful difference. And before we get started, we'd like to highlight a few campaigns and events going on this month. If you're looking for inspiration or simply want to feel a little less alone in your journey, I encourage you to explore the 30 Stories campaign. Every April and September, we share powerful personal stories from cancer survivors and caregivers, just like many of you here today. These stories offer support, encouragement, and real-life advice from people who've been through it. We're right in the middle of this month's campaign, so new stories are still being released. It's a great time to follow along, to read the latest stories, connect with others, and find strength in shared experiences. In addition, we'd like to share an exciting opportunity that takes place on Tuesday, June 10th. The dysphagia community will have a landmark moment to speak directly with the FDA, drug developers, and clinicians during a virtual, externally led patient-focused drug development meeting, co-hosted by the National Foundation of Swallowing Disorders and the Thank Foundation. This event is a rare chance to share lived experiences and treatment priorities, helping shape the future of therapy development for swallowing disorders. For more info, visit the link on the screen or use the QR code to find out more. So I'd like to get started first by introducing our panelists. So I'd like to start with you, John. Can you introduce yourself to us?
Oh, sure. Hi, my name is John Burton. My wife was diagnosed 2.5 years ago with head and neck cancer. She went through and I was her caregiver. She went through an amazing alternative recovery. And I work with Thank now to create resources for caregivers. And I'm really grateful to be here.
Thank you, John. Roxanne.
Right, I'm Roxanne. My husband, I'm his caregiver. He contracted COVID early 2020 in March and spent 3 months on a ventilator, which caused a whole multitude of issues, and he was unable to swallow due to a hole in his esophagus.
Thank you. DJ.
Hi, everyone. I'm DJ. I am a group fitness instructor and personal trainer, and get to work with people in all areas of fitness. And I am thankful for being here today.
Christy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Christy Vanacore. I am a holistic psychologist, multidimensional wellness practitioner, and after witnessing the staggering rates of chronic illness in adults and children through the years, I really made it my life's mission to bring back people to their innate self-healing capacities. So to do that, I weave a lot of ancient wisdom with contemporary science in order to help people thrive and live their best lives.
Well, thank you all for being here today. And I am your moderator, and my name is Genevieve Lowry, and I'm a certified child life specialist, having spent over 25 years working with children and families with pediatric cancer and blood disorders. So I'd like to get started first by really asking John and Roxanne, what are some of the challenges that you anticipated as a caregiver? But then what were some that sort of maybe snuck up on you or surprised you or that you weren't really anticipating?
John, you can go first.
Okay, great. All right, great. So going into it, I knew there was going to be a lot of driving. I knew I was going to have to manage medication. I knew I was going to have to. We have a daughter. I knew, I was going to have to parent at a higher, more involved level. But I had a really, the pool was 12 feet deep, and I only knew about the first 6 inches. And then going through it is when I discovered I call it, you have to become the face of the whole experience for the patient that you're caring for. During treatment, they tell you that the patient remembers 20% of what they're told. You as the caregiver remember 50%. So you're really kind of, that's a hugely important job, is to chronicle everything that's going on. They also, the patient doesn't know personally the surgeon, the oncologist, the nurse, they know you. So when they're being given news, and I noticed this with Trish, is my wife's name. I noticed this with Trish. When they're given news, they look to you. Like, is that bad? Is that good? Are we okay? And so you're really you're really the gauge there. There's so much administrative stuff to do, just daily life stuff to do, that I was not prepared for. Like, you make a joke when you live with somebody that you don't realize everything they do till they stop doing it. Trish did a lot of stuff. And so it was running a full household as well. It's a funny story. I'm a really bad cook. So we get the diagnosis, and Trish is sitting in her chair, and we're talking about the treatment. She said, we're all going to die. And I'm like, none of us are going to die. She goes, no, it's not going to be cancer. We're going to starve to death, because I'm that bad at it. But we didn't. So I wasn't prepared for that. I also was not prepared at all for the toll that it took on me. I like to think tough. I've been through some stuff myself, and had a comeback or two myself. And this was unlike anything else I ever experienced. I wasn't prepared for the amount of drain. I wasn't prepared for the emotional exhaustion. And it's emotional exhaustion, and Roxanne can tell you this too. It's emotional exhaustion you can't show. You're 22 hours a day, you're in front. And I remember having to manage that emotionally too. We had a daughter. My daughter's room is off of the living room where Trish would sit in her chair. And my daughter would cry with the door open, because she knew I had to listen to see if anything was going on with Trish. So she would cry silently, I would cry silently, and we would time it. I'd go out and check every 10 minutes, then go back in and hold her, then go back out and check, and then go and hold her. And it all had to be done silently. So the amount of emotional management was also unexpected. And then finally, the PTSD afterwards, that's a real thing. I've just now finally gotten to the point where I can talk about this without crying. I'll cry, but without crying at the first sentence. And Trish bit her cheek the other day, and we were in a dentist, and he gave us 2 weeks, and because her cancer was in one cheek and neck, and then she bit the other side, but she didn't know it was a bite. She said it felt like the other thing. And, you keep getting these little reminders. So yeah, the aftercare, the fact that caregiving doesn't stop when you're done with treatment. It almost starts when you're done with treatment. I wasn't expecting that either.
Roxanne.
Yeah, 100% everything he said, I can totally relate to. My husband, I mentioned he spent 3 months on a ventilator. He was hospitalized and institutionalized for 1 year straight between hospitals and rehabs. He woke up paralyzed once he got off the ventilator with nerve damage, so he couldn't walk. The damage to his esophagus, he couldn't eat or drink water or take medications orally at all. So when he finally came home, it was unbelievable. I hadn't, I knew it was going to be crazy. I did not know how crazy it was going to be. Fortunately, he was able to, he came home with an electric wheelchair, but he was able to stand, thank God. So I didn't have to physically lift him, which was like my only requirement to get him home. But yeah, managing the medications and everything that had to be given through a feeding tube, the doctor's appointments, the follow-ups, trying to find doctors who could help with his multitude of issues was just unbelievable. And really, he had so much to overcome. I mean, they didn't even think he was going to survive. I was told multiple times he would not survive. So that everything that he did overcome, we would celebrate like big, no matter how big or how small. So that, I think, helped keep us both going and staying positive and recruiting all the help we could get. When he got home, insurance would pay for a physical therapist, occupational, an aide, and a nurse. And I took advantage of every one of them. You know, as long as we could get help in the door, we would get help in the door. And then, you know, I would learn from watching them and the nurses and everyone who cared for him, but staying positive and being the face to them, because I also remember when he was on the ventilator, you know, well-meaning family and friends would call and somebody would say, I don't know how you're still standing. And then I would think, how am I still standing? I can't do this. And then the next day somebody would call and say, you're so strong. And I'd be like, that's right, I am so strong. I can do this. And I think that taught me how to speak to him as well. Like, you have to really encourage and be positive. There has to be hope.
Wow, there's a lot in there. What I'm hearing so much and still processing all of it a little bit, but what I'm also really hearing is that there's a lot of things that you didn't know, but as they came at you, you also started to figure things out and figure things out about yourself. I think, Roxanne, some of the things that you bring up specifically in what you shared was the watching of other people who were helping you also to really take notice of how are they supporting my husband? What are the words of encouragement that I want and need to hear, right? So that then you could not only take that on yourself, but also share that with others. And John, I think just like the finding those sort of small moments and those small spaces to kind of really weave together um, care for yourself and thinking about, okay, who else needs care in this house, especially if you've got children, but it's not just the patient, but it's also other family members, or even if you still have, you know, if your spouse still has their parents, that these are all people that can help and support, but they're also all people that also need help as well and
Yeah.
support too. So really, thank you so much. Was there something that you noticed that helped you recognize that you did need some additional support? And I'm going to ask John and Roxanne, but I also want to take a moment and bring in Christy and DJ to think about what are some of the indicators that might be telling for people who may need some help as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and full disclosure, DJ is a friend of mine who actually walked me through this to a real large extent. For me, it was like your emotions are so right at the surface that it's almost it's alarming. I would I was caregiver 22 hours a day, and the other 2 hours a day I would go to the gym and work out. And on Saturday, you know, and I would notice right away, I would start running and I would start crying. Just moving my body would start me crying. And you know, it just so your emotions are so up here because you can't put there's no place to put them. Like you Genevieve mentioned, you know, your in-laws. That's a big thing. You're also like an information manager because nobody can call the patient and say how you doing because the patient can't talk. So you know, you're managing information and that was a big part of it. And you know, I remember I remember thinking I remember thinking that, you know, I really need support. I'll never forget this one day. Sorry, here's the crying part. I'm on a treadmill and I start running. And DJ teaches these classes. There's like 14 people in these classes, 2 rows of treadmills. You know, we're standing on balls that you're not supposed to stand on and lifting things. And so he's managing all these people so that nobody breaks their neck. But he saw me, he saw me getting weak, and he just came over and just fist bumped me. And I'll never forget that because it meant way much more than it should have. And that's kind of when I knew, like, wow, I'm at the brink and I need other people.
Such a great point. Just those sort of small kind of moments also.
Yeah.
Roxanne, what sort of was your indicator for you that you needed to find a space for yourself?
Just the overwhelming magnitude of it all, because he had such a multitude of issues to be dealt with. Yeah, and I would go upstairs at night. He couldn't do the stairs when he came home. So my one thing was I would sleep in my own bed upstairs because I knew I really needed the sleep, and he could obviously call me if he needed me. But that would be where I would kind of let my stress out, cry if I needed to, and just get my rest to do it again the next day. You just have to keep going.
Sleep is such an important part to our mental health, and I don't think that we recognize that enough. So I'm so appreciative of you bringing that up also. DJ and Christy, I mean, John spoke about how you noticed that something was going on for him. Are there things that you specifically look for or that you share with people? These are indicators that there's something that you need to find a space or some support for yourself.
Yeah.
Sure. You see people every day. I think if you're in these kind of industries, you're a people person anyway, and you're intuitive in that way. And uh, I think whether it's a fitness instructor or other professionals in these areas, you pick up on certain things, and you're not just like, and in my case, there's a different hat you can wear at different times, and you wear them in this way. You're like the instructor, the motivator, the cheerleader, and then sometimes you're like the therapist, or you're a sounding board, or you're, because people share things with you, you develop a relationship. And the reason I bring that up is because I would love for people who are going through these huge issues that they're dealing with. It's happening to everybody, so when you're caring for someone who is ill, there I've seen drain. Like, you could see it on the face, you could see it under the eyes, you can see it in the shoulders, and it's so there's a physical aspect to it that you can see. And to that point, like when you see that kind of drain, I sometimes fear that people feel like, well, I feel emotionally drained, so then I can't go to the gym, or I can't even go for a brisk walk to get because they feel drained. And I would counter that by saying that's exactly what you should do, because getting those endorphins flowing and doing something good for yourself is only going to make you better able to give back to the person that you and the family members and the others that you'll need to give back to. So and there's different points. Like, there was a time where John like couldn't spend a whole lot of time at the gym because he was really intensely caring for Trish. But then, like, there was this slow, gradual release of responsibility where all of a sudden, he was taking a class a day, and then he was able to take 2 classes in a row. And in watching that whole process, I watched him keep himself strong and use not only me, because then he had this community of these other members that were taking the same classes as him, that all of a sudden it was like this community of love and support. And I just really feel that it helped John in ways that he can articulate, and maybe some ways that he doesn't even really know. And I've seen that in different areas, not necessarily always caring for someone going through throat, head, and neck cancer, but there's people are going through things, and I think that fitness and nutrition and spending the time thinking about yourself too will only make you a better caregiver, because you'll have more inside to give.
Christy?
Yeah. So as a practitioner, a few things that I look for are some of the more sort of physical, more obvious factors, right? If somebody is losing weight, if they're not eating, they're not sleeping, some of those natural activities of daily living that aren't happening, that's when it's sort of red flag status. I also am very keyed into the caregivers who are working so hard to stay positive, in a sense of stifling so much what they're feeling. And, it's like putting that smile on their face, thinking that they have to be positive all the time, because all that's doing is keeping the body and keeping everything in a state of contraction and misalignment. And related to that is, one of the number one sort of complaints that I hear from caregivers, believe it or not, most of the time, it's not the emotional. So when I first start working with a caregiver, initially, it's not the person coming in saying, gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so drained, I'm so anxious, I'm so sad, I'm so worried. It's you can sort of see the physical, like DJ was saying, but then it's this, oh, my back hurts, or, oh, my knees feel tight, or, oh, you see them kind of moving and they feel stuck and contracted. It's the physical pain that, if anything, gets their attention. Because look, as humans, separate from caregivers, we are all so skilled at suppressing our emotions, right? We've all learned through our lives when to rein it in, when to not share what we're feeling. And as caregivers, that's really important, right? We're told we've got to fight for our loved one, we have to be positive, so we sequester. But we know that emotions, that word emotion, just means energy in motion. We are all vessels of energy. Energy wants to move. When energy gets stuck, that's what creates pockets of pain and tension in the body. So I hear so often the first place that people will have some awareness, and I know at some point we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and all of that, but this awareness of, oh, my body feels stiff, or I'm okay, but I'm just, I'm a little tight. Well, that tightness, that physical pain is a symptom of stored and sequestered emotions. So that's when I began to have conversations with people like, okay, we've got to do something about releasing, all of that emotion. And like, it's okay to feel that. But that physical pain is something that really surprises people as being connected to their caregiving. So that's something that I always look for. And then one other thing I'll say is, this sense of numbing and being detached. So that's a very common theme that I see in caregivers, where, you're going through the motions, right? And John and Roxanne, you both shared this, right? It's the conversations with doctors, the med management, all the things that after a while you start to go through the motions while you are suppressing and sequestering your feelings and your emotions. And after a while, what starts to happen as the system is bracing itself for danger, it goes into sort of a nervous system freeze where you're frozen. And when you start to tap in, it can feel like you're numb and you're anesthetized. And so that's another thing that I hear from caregivers all the time. If they can articulate anything about how they're feeling, they'll say, I'm just numb. I'm just numb. And so that's another big red flag, that there is so much going on behind the scenes that they are not allowing themselves to face and confront. And what then happens later, and John, you mentioned the concept of PTSD, right? When we spend the whole duration, let's say, of our loved one's illness in this cycle of stifling, going through the motions, stifling, going through the motions, such that we ourselves are anesthetized. At the end, when the dust settles, there is this cataclysmic, because the system can't push down anymore. That's essentially what is the PTSD, right? It's all of the stored and stuck trauma that is actually imprinted in our cells and our muscles and our joints and our tissues that needs a place to go. It's volcanic, actually. And we see that happen a lot. And this is where caregivers can end up, then dealing with their own illness after the fact. So it's important to help oneself through the journey to prevent that downfall, that big influx of that cataclysmic energy that looks like PTSD later. So it's really important.
Yeah. I think there's so many connections between what you both are saying, what DJ is witnessing and what John experienced was, as he physically began to move his body, the emotions were released, and that energy and tension that you're talking about was able to really get out of his system, in a sense, that the more that we move our bodies. So even if you're unable to make an hour class or find that kind of time, that even these small amounts of go for a walk around your block, take a moment to, just dance it out if you need to for 5 minutes, and just sort of moving your body just kind of helps release some of that energy to sort of skim off the top, at least. So then you're not so numb, right? Then you're not repressing all that energy. I think those are really good points to recognize when your body is feeling physically drained, that that is an indicator that you are storing something that maybe you need to continue to move, to do something to move that out. Now, physical exercise is one way to do that. What are some other tools? John, Roxanne, what are some other things that you guys discovered for yourself that were helpful? And we'll go into what those things are in a little bit. So how, maybe it's right now we should talk about how did you discover other things that were helpful for you?
John?
Okay, fair enough. I'm a big meditator. I had a practice going into this journey, and but it completely changed when I was, when you're in the middle of the war, your meditation practice changed, my meditation practice changed, but it really served me, just to have some mental clarity. Journaling. I have done this thing for years called morning pages. Every morning you get up and you just handwrite 3 pages. It can be, you can write whatever you want. You can write Christy, DJ, Roxanne, Genevieve for 3 pages, but it just has to be handwritten, and and I found that just the benefit of just slowing down and communicating whatever was going on, being able to communicate it and not having to worry about a reaction. Because, one thing when you're a caregiver is when, unless you're in a situation where you can see somebody like Christy or see somebody like DJ, most of it's never about you. So, I'll go to friend X and say, I haven't slept in 2 days and I'm worried I'm messing up the medication, and she's bald in the back of her head, so I'm taking out all the mirrors and blah blah. And they'll be like, the first thing you get is, how's she doing? And so journaling is so important, because you don't get that how's she doing. It's just you get 20 minutes where it's just about you, and you can sort yourself out. So between exercise, meditation, journaling, and sometimes you just got to sob, but those really carried me.
Roxanne?
Similar meditation, also just, I think the idea to get quiet and just like let your mind be free for a little while from everything. Mine was more a prayer than journaling, but that type of meditation worked for me. And also, our younger daughter was in college when all this was going on, but she finished and came home. So one morning, usually a month was all we could really work out, but I would get away and I would go do something normal that I would had done before he was sick, which is just a local flea market, but it would just be a complete mental release to be outside and doing something that was just felt normal, things, I was able to do before. That helps.
Yeah, I think, John, you mentioned the sort of, it's kind of like a brain dump, right? Like just sort
Yeah.
of those 3 pages, those morning pages, to just, dump that stuff somewhere so that you, again, that's skimming off the top the same way that just a little bit of that exercise does. And I think the practice of really finding a space, like as Roxanne talks about, of being able to do something that feels normal. I don't always like that language around this, but something that is really just for you, and to take in once a month, whatever it is, to be able to step out and go do something that sort of isn't burdened by or feels burdened by the illness that your family is experiencing. And I think stringing together some of those smaller kind of moments, right?
Can I just say, add one thing?
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're hearing things like doing something normal or exercising or journaling or meditation, and you're thinking to yourself, I didn't have the discipline to do that stuff before this happened. There's no way I'm going to have the discipline to do it now. Allow me to disabuse you of that. When you're hungry, you don't need discipline to eat. And this kind of thing becomes so much easier. You would anticipate it would be harder, but no, it becomes so much easier when you need it that much more.
That is such a great point. And again, going back to, it doesn't have to be 3 pages either. That's your practice, but your practice is your own practice. So what that develops into for you. Even Roxanne's mention of using her meditation was really prayer, right?
Yep.
That people really turn to and rely on their faith in ways, or in ways that are meaningful to them and what works for you to find that time in that space. And if it starts off with only 5 minutes, then so be it. You have to, it's important to start somewhere.
Totally.
Genevieve, I just want to piggyback off of something that John just said that I think is really important, which is, that in situations like this, we think of, okay, I've got to do something to cope, right? And the word coping skills gets thrown around a lot. And I prefer to talk about it in terms of more of a lifestyle as opposed to a coping skill where there's pressure that now I have to go find a practice. Now I've got to go find something to do, right? And as John said, I didn't have time before. I certainly don't have time now. And it all of a sudden creates another thing on the to-do list for people, right? It's like, I got enough to deal with. I got enough to worry about. I can't go become a meditator. I can't join a gym. I can't do all these things. And automatically there's a shutdown to it. So I think what's important in the way that I like to guide caregivers is to think about it as a lifestyle. And I like to give kind of a little explanation of this concept of mindfulness. So all of the practices that both Roxanne and John talked about, right? Meditation, and that word even has a lot of connotations for people, right? That's a word that either lands with some people or really doesn't, in part because a lot of people don't understand exactly what it is. But even journaling, movement practices, the essence of these practices is this concept of mindfulness. Now, if I can just say something about what mindfulness is, because even that, it's thrown around a lot and people are like, yeah, okay, mindfulness, and they don't really know what it is, and they don't really understand how accessible it is. It's not something you have to go buy. It's not something you've got to learn. You have the tools to do it right here. It's you, it's your body. You've got everything you need to do it. So this idea of mindfulness, it's really about like these three key ingredients. It's about having awareness, paying attention to right here, right now, what's unfolding in the present moment without judging it, without analyzing it, without reacting to it. That's all that mindfulness is. It's being right here, right now. It's like I tell people, wherever your feet are, that's where you should be. And that may sound silly, but think about it. Our mind is off in a million places, right? Our mind, fun fact, 95% of the time for survival, our mind is not where we physically are standing. And that's when our mind is racing, and that's when we're ruminating, and that's when we're fixated on things and we're not connected in our bodies. And that's when we become numb and all of those things. So I think it's important to understand that what we're trying to accomplish in terms of both helping us as caregivers to navigate the current stressor, but also to expand our resiliency in general for life. How can I meet life head on? It's one of my favorite expressions by Jon Kabat-Zinn is full catastrophe living, right? How do I keep staying in flow and moving with ease in my life as life comes up for me and life throws things my way? So it's about how do I land right here, right now, witness what's happening, stay here instead of running away from it, and not judge it, not analyze it, not criticize it, not react to it. And there are practices, really easy practices, and I know towards the end we'll go through some of these, but really simple, quick and dirty, I call it, practices that will allow us to do that we don't need anything formal to do. We don't have to take a class. We don't have to read a book. We don't have to practice a certain spiritual tradition. It's nothing fancy. It's really easy. And it's just about learning how to be in right relationship with yourself and your body and your mind, such that you can be in right relationship with the world and all the people around you. And it's important because the way that you can be in those moments of presence, being aware, being self-reflective, taking a step back from reactivity and those habitual impulses and responses, that allows us to then support the people around us without even having to say a word. Because again, it's energy. My energy affects your energy. We know that nervous systems co-regulate. Our nervous systems are only as regulated as the 5 people we spend the most time with, which could be good or bad, right? So another important way that we can support our loved ones is by tuning in and making sure that we're in a place of regulation. And that doesn't necessarily mean calm. It just means flexible and resilient, such that we're meeting life as it comes to us with presence and with grace, and being in this centered place so that we can make decisions and take action. That does wonders for our well-being as well as for our loved ones. And again, it doesn't take much to do this.
So important. I think that's a really good point. Thank you for adding that sort of the foundation of mindfulness. I think that we get scared by words like journaling and meditation, and they become overwhelming. And like you said, it becomes part of a to-do list, which, and I think also this idea of the ways in which that impacts our ability to regulate our own bodies so that we can then co-regulate with others around us. Or if we are in a state of regulation, then we are able to better support someone who's not in that state, right? So someone who might be in feeling fearful or worried or concerned, and not to say that you aren't also, but that you're in a different headspace for that, to be able to really support somebody. And to find, I think, people that do that for you is also really an important piece of this, or strategies that do that for you. So we've actually talked about meditation, journaling, we've talked a little bit about exercise, but there's something, Roxanne, that I really want you to share about, and I think it relates a lot to what we're talking about. You often, or you've mentioned in other spaces with us, this idea of reframing what's happy. Like, what does it mean to be happy? Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean when you say that?
Yes. So because we spent so entirely much time in hospitals and rehabilitation centers, I mean, it went on for years, that I realized there are days in the hospital that were good days. Maybe good things happened. Maybe we had a really wonderful nurse, or somebody really funny came in. So there were days that were good. And just like you can go on vacation and everything goes wrong and you have a horrible day, you can have good days during these types of trials as well. So just try to find the positive in each day, and no, not every day is going to be horrific.
I think that I love this idea, and I think it speaks to when Christy was talking about being present in moments, that what you're really saying is like, all right, this moment right now is a good moment, and we can be happy in this moment. Things are going okay right now. That it doesn't have to be a big production of what we consider or think about as happy. But I think that sort of smallness of it and being able to string those together can really be helpful. And I think when you talk about being positive, that those are the kinds of things that you're talking about. You can get, sometimes people can take positivity to a level that can actually become somewhat dangerous, as Christy mentioned earlier. But I think when we're thinking about positivity and we're thinking about these sort of smaller moments and stringing those together and really looking at where are the spaces where we can find these little bits of happiness that we can feel positive about, right? DJ, I'd like to talk a little bit more about yoga and fitness and just moving our bodies. Are there other ways that people can infuse this without being a class, right? Where are some of the spaces and ways that people can sort of incrementally or find small pockets of time?
Absolutely. And this kind of dovetails off of what Christy was talking about with mindfulness. Before I became a group fitness instructor, personal trainer, I was an educator for 25 years, school teacher, assistant principal, principal. And towards the end of that time, mindfulness really became a uh, popular thing to do with kids And after I did it with kids, I did it with teachers in before we would start a meeting. And it would be something simple, like even just asking them to close their eyes, sit in the chair, and then use their senses to kind of just ground themselves. How do your arms feel when they're resting on the chair arms? What do you hear? And like you could sit outside and for 5 minutes and just listen to the birds, or feel your feet on the ground and feel your stomach inhale as you inhale and exhale. And so the mindfulness piece is like a perfect 3 5 minute way to then maybe then it's stretching, standing up, and just moving your body. I remembered with John, like I know with caregivers, like here's the issue with kids too, and all of us nowadays, our volume knob is on 10 all the time. And so like a mindfulness practice is a great way to bring that volume knob back down to 1. And then it's like a reset, and you're grounded and you can like start again. Um, the the ability to take a few minutes and just stretch, the stress that's involved in the caregiving that I've seen just as an outsider is that you're going all the time, you have all these weights on your shoulders, and stress starts to look like this. These are called your upper trapezius, and people feel it, and then your neck feels like, oh, and you get these kinks. And so stretching should be a part of everybody's, at least a couple times a week. And yoga then yoga leads into, if you could take a yoga class, great, but maybe you don't have enough time for a whole yoga class. There are some simple stretches you could do in a few minutes that will just get you to open up and move and feel like you could do it sitting in a chair. I could do it right now, but it will help some of the things that Christy was talking about before, of like releasing some of those things from your neck and upper traps and back, and just get some blood flowing. And so now we're talking about things that like mindfulness practice that could take 2 or 3 minutes. A little stretching program maybe takes 5 or 10 minutes. And then, maybe you're able to like stretch and take a walk, even if it's around the house a couple of times outside, get some sun or some fresh air. All of those things are going to be for you. And when you're giving 110% to someone else or to the family, and I think then you start to lose your sense of self and start to stop doing things for yourself. And so then when you start to give something back to yourself, then you're keeping yourself important and a priority, and then you can just be a better caregiver overall. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a full class. I think yoga is a great way to add some of the things that John talked about, where that there's like that meditative state, or there could be, that Christy was talking about with some of that release in some of those areas that just automatically on all of us get like tense like that. But it could be something as simple as, I don't know any yoga. Well, you can stretch and just move your body and do things that are going to just feel good and release some of that tension and stress.
Yeah, those micro and I bet Roxanne agrees with me. No pressure, Roxanne. You don't have to, but I bet you do. Caregiving is like an hour to hour, or sometimes half hour to half hour, or sometimes 15-minute to 15-minute event where you're in a doctor's office and you're going to get news, and I just got to get through the next 15 minutes. And those little micro techniques that DJ's describing are just like 3 deep breaths or 1 torso twist or something. It's 12:47 right now. I just got to get to 117. I'm going to take 3 breaths, and then at 117 I'll look down and I got there, and then I can do it again. So yeah, and what Christy was talking about lifestyle, what you find is that if you do those little micro things, that's how technically adept I am. Those little micro things, if you do them and you get from 12:47 to 117, and then you do it again at 2:47, and you get to 3:17 again, it becomes, you don't have to work to make it a lifestyle. It becomes that anyway. But Roxanne, it's like that, right? It's a half hour. Get this half hour done, right?
100%. I was thinking while Dr. Christy and DJ were just saying all that I wish I had this webinar 3 or 4 years ago, because that would have all been really helpful. I have it all the stuff that you mentioned, just, and the tips were great. I mean, that was really good. I can see how that would all be really helpful.
Well, it's not too late.
I was gonna say, it's
Gonna have to
definitely
get their
not too
numbers.
late.
I have their numbers. Just hang on.
There you go. There you go. You know, we've been talking a lot about mindfulness and you know, exercise and all these practices. And I know, Krista, you spoke a little bit about some of the benefits. Can you sort of succinctly share some of the sort of bigger benefits that people get by doing these kinds of these sort of practices?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, first and foremost, again, it's about reconnecting with a moment, with a moment and with ourselves in a moment. So it's beneficial, obviously, for our health and well-being. It's beneficial for our nervous systems to come out of that state of either flight or fight, where we're, you know, ready to fight off the predator or run, or that freeze and collapse that I alluded to before, where we become almost anesthetized and frozen and numb. So it brings us out of that, where we can feel alive again, right? It's like I can feel the vibrance in me. I can come back to life and experience vitality. So it works wonders to bring our nervous system to a more balanced place, down from the high, up from the low, and ready. So nervous system regulation is about being ready and resilient for challenges. So it puts us in a position that, again, whatever's coming at, you know, 147, right? I'm ready for. I'm here, I'm present, I'm grounded, and I'm ready. So it also helps with emotional regulation, such that when we're feeling those waves of emotion come over us, we're not consumed by it, or we don't feel we have to push it down, or we don't, you know, completely block it out, or we don't explode and react in maybe old habitual ways, right? Because we're also dealing with that, you know, as caregivers, we're bringing our own baggage to the situation. So these mindfulness practices can help us to sort of keep all of that in check, so that we're not bogged down by the weight of all of our, you know, past experiences. It also allows us then, because we're present, to be so, I'm going to use an expression my teenage boys use, lock in. We can lock into the moment and experience clarity and, you know, a greater focus and attention, right? So as John and Roxanne were saying before, you know, as caregivers, you're the one on, you're the one hearing the news, you're the one who's got to keep track of everything. So you've got to be able to focus, to tune out distraction, right? And to be able to hear everything in a neutral way without your own emotion getting in the way. And mindfulness practice helps with that. And then I guess, you know, the final thing I mean, there's so much I could say about it. But you mentioned succinct, and I'm trying really hard. I have a lot to say. John knows.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. But, you know, ultimately, right, when we are in this state of presence and we're connected, we're going to experience peace. And this isn't just about happiness. This isn't just about calmness. It's a sense of, I am here looking at what's happening around me, and I am meeting what's happening with acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean suck it up and deal with it. Acceptance means that I am not forcefully resisting, because resistance closes cells. That's what keeps us stuck. But acceptance keeps us open, such that we're a free-flowing system of energy, so we can remain in a state of ease. And when we are that person in a state of flow and ease, doesn't mean we're not feeling. We're allowing our feelings to move through us. Then we are showing up as a present and attuned, but also authentic caregiver to our loved ones. We're not doing the false positive. We're not stifling and shoving down. They can feel that. We're just showing up open and ready and resilient and aware, and saying like, okay, I got this. And that's what these practices can really offer to us.
And I bet, Roxanne, I bet you back me up on this one too, but you don't have to again. If you're listening to this and you're a caregiver and you listen to it later and you're a caregiver, you know, we're doing a lot of talking about trauma recovery and about and like, you know, I said, TJ gave me a fist bump and I felt better. You're looking for feeling better the next 20 minutes. You're not, when you're caregiving, you're in the trauma. You're not going to recover from it. So if you try this 2 or 3 times, if you take take DJ's 3 breaths or the exercise Christy's going to show us or whatever, and 45 minutes later, you're back in the stew. Yeah, that's what it is. You're going 45 minutes to 45 minutes. You're going an hour to an hour, and then a day to a day. So I just want to make sure that we're managing expectations a little bit about what these practices do for you while you're caregiving versus what they do when the caregiving chapter ends and now you're in recovery, because they're two very different things.
Yeah, yeah. And John, to that end, I just want to say we have to meet ourselves with compassion and kindness, right? That, acknowledging what the reality of the situation is. It's not just let me hurry up and get over it and let me do the best I can. It's understanding some moments are going to feel really hard, and that's okay. Right. And some moments will feel easier. And some moments, as Roxanne said, we'll be able to be aware of the glimmers, right? Those moments that spark joy, those moments where we can say, wow, this was a good day. And other moments we won't be able to find that. It's all acceptable. Mindfulness is about saying it's all welcome here. It's all welcome to this table. There are no expectations. There are no shoulds. It's all welcome here.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's really lovely to think about having grace for yourself and compassion for yourself during incredibly stressful moments, and just really saying, I'm doing what I'm able to do in this moment right now. And as you string those moments together, as John talks about, right, giving yourself the grace and compassion that it's all right when you don't get it quite right, or where you feel like you're falling apart, also, that all that is welcome in that space, and that you should, being okay with the ways in which that you're expressing and feeling and experiencing this. Before we, I want to make sure that we get a chance for Christy to share with us a practice so that people have something they can begin with, hopefully. So Christy, I'd love to have you share that practice with us.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So as I mentioned before, I want to share, there's so many practices, and what will be happening after this webinar is everyone will receive an email with some additional resources. So I'll be sharing several other practices that you can integrate into your life that will involve everything from mindfulness, movement practices that will really help. But for now, I wanted to share quick and dirty, right? Super easy. And the first practice I want to share, I use an acronym for it called LOVE. And it stands for land, observe and orient, verify and validate, and explore. And I'm going to walk you through it. It's super, super easy. So the first step of this, and this is something that can be done throughout the day. I even set timers on my phone to remind myself to do this. But it's throughout the day. First step is to land, which means pause. Stop whatever it is that you're doing and feel your feet on the ground and just land. And again, this can be done anywhere that you are. So you're just going to pause and you're going to land. Second step is, and DJ was alluding to this before, kind of to orient yourself and observe what's happening around you. This is a nervous system technique of orienting to establish safety in your system. Take a moment, look around, use your 5 senses to notice what you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you touch, and what you smell. And when you do this, notice I'm moving my entire neck. I'm looking above, I'm looking below, I'm looking behind. We want to get the neck moving because that's starting to get our vagus nerve moving, which is the longest nerve in the body that gets tight and contracted when we're in stress states. So we're doing 2 things with that. We're moving and we're showing our nervous system, look, no danger here, I'm okay. So we're moving around and orienting ourselves to the present moment. And we're just observing. We're not saying, wow, that's a pretty tree. It's just a tree, right? So we get in the habit of meeting each moment with neutrality. The next step, the V in the love, is to just verify and validate. As you tune in now to your inner landscape, we looked around, we're going to look inside and tune in. Oh, what's happening in my body is I feel my chest feels tight. My knees are shaking. My feet are tingly. I'm cold. whatever the sensation is in the body, we want to say it. Say what that sensation is. I feel warm, cold, tension, tightness, pulsing, throbbing, all sensory words only. And then the last part to explore is to tune in with yourself and say, what do I need? Do I need something? Do I need a drink of water? Do I need to put a blanket on? Do I need to move my body? What do I need? This sounds so rudimentary, but again, when we're in the throes of caregiving, we don't do these things. So this simple practice, love, land, orient to your outer landscape and your inner landscape. Verify it by saying what you see inside and out, and then explore what it is that your body needs. What does my body need right now, and how can I give it? And then what I like to do right after that is I do this practice where I am breathing and using my hands. So I'm going to show you this really quickly. This can be done with the love, or it can be done separate. It's your body's way, as I always cue. It's your body's way. So what this basically is I take one hand, place it on my forehead, take my other hand, place it on the back of the base of my head, right at the top of my spine. And as I'm here, I'm tuning into my belly. And as I'm inhaling, I'm sending my belly out and sending my belly back in as I exhale with my hands on my body. So I'm inhaling. We could try that now. Belly button is going out. Exhale, release all the air in your belly and let it go. And then you just switch hands, do the same thing. I won't get into all the science of what's happening here, but trust me, it's more involved than it looks. Inhale, send the belly out. Exhale, send the belly back in. And you can do this a couple of times. There are more practices. I'm going to be sending, you'll get videos of this, but research shows that 5 to 7 minutes of these types of nervous system regulation and somatic practices is enough to reset the nervous system. 5 minutes, it's all that it takes.
Thank you so much for sharing that. They're nice and simple, so people can actually do them on their own. And I think that's really wonderful. It's a great place to be able to even get started. So in conclusion, I want to be mindful of our time and the time that people have in their lives to devote to webinars. I want to thank everybody for joining us today for the Mind, Body, Spirit of the Caregiver. We're so grateful to our panelists for sharing their heartfelt stories, experiences, and practical advice in areas of knowledge and expertise. It's been an incredibly insightful discussion. And as a bonus for attending today's session, as Dr. Vanacore mentioned, you'll receive a link to the full recording, which you can also share with anyone you might think will benefit. And we'll also include a few additional support resources, so you can be on the lookout for that valuable email. Please join us for our next webinar in July, where we're going to discuss strategies that parents can use to help children understand their diagnosis and provide them with tools to cope with the unexpected during the treatment process. And for more resources about caregivers of the thyroid, head, and neck that focus on the health and mental wellness of newly diagnosed patients, cancer survivors, and their caregivers, please visit the Thank Guide. The Thank Guide provides trusted information, support, resources, and inspiration you need as you travel the difficult path of the cancer journey. And before we wrap up, we encourage you to join the National Foundation of Swallowing Disorders and Dr. Reva Barwell on May 7th for an engaging webinar on how dissolvable solid foods can safely reintroduce chewing as a powerful strategy in dysphagia treatment. Enhancing oral sensation, bolus control, and overall quality of life. This session blends evidence-based insights with practical applications to bring flavor, function, and enjoyment back to modified diets. And we also want to bring your attention to an exciting opportunity happening on June 10th. Again, the dysphagia community will have a landmark moment to speak directly with the FDA, drug developers, and clinicians during a virtual, externally led, patient-focused drug development meeting co-hosted by the National Foundation of Swallowing Disorders and the Thank Foundation. This event offers a rare chance to share lived experiences and treatment priorities, helping shape the future of therapy development for swallowing disorders. To learn more about, just visit the link on the screen or the QR code with your mobile device. And again, we'd like to take a moment to recognize EISAI and Lilly for supporting Thank's mission. Their dedication to empowering patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals help drive meaningful conversations with a lasting impact. And once again, thank you for joining us today. We hope you found it inspiring and helpful as you navigate your own journey. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next webinar.